Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Do not adjust your sets. It is Thursday. We are live from High G's, West Lothian's most exclusive nightclub. Your normal interviewer has become the interviewee. I've been asked very kindly to interview Graeme on this evening's podcast. So, what can I say about this guy? I've personally known him for about 32 years. Ex-RAF, poet, writer, author, husband, father, brother in more ways than one, a successful consultant and the founder of Force Forward. And I believe now he's going to be a Wim Hof instructor. Are there no end, or is there no end to this man's talents? Well, let's meet him. He's not in the green room. He's right next to me.
Hello.
Hello, mate. Well, thank you for having me to interview you. So,
Cheers. Oh,
how you doing?
I'm absolutely brilliant. I'm absolutely wonderful. It's so nice.
Yeah,
to have you here.
I mean, the only other person that's been here so far has been your daughter Heather.
Yeah.
So, and that was recorded. So this is an exclusive. This is a first live, two-person from High G's.
World exclusive.
I know.
It's nice, isn't
it? And I mean, as I said, I'll give you a bit of an intro, gone about things you've done. I'd like to talk about things you're going to do, but most of all, I want to talk to you about the music.
I know.
You always ask people you're going to interview to put on or to choose 4 or 5 tunes of their choice with a story, a meaning, something that's defined their lives.
Yeah.
You can see the rhetoric of this. I've been watching this podcast for a while, so I'm trying to come out with the lines.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of ladies that have broken the mold on it, but we're going back old school.
Yeah.
Again, we try to do the little rituals where we have a little chat on the Wednesday and you send through the tunes to me, and a couple of them surprised me.
Yeah.
A couple of them I was like, absolutely wow.
Yeah.
And I'm really intrigued to hear the stories behind them. So before we delve into the man that is Graeme Richardson, Pinky, to all those that we know and love, shall we start with your first track?
Shall we? It's an Elvis song. It's Jailhouse Rock.
What a tune!
And it's not one of my favorite Elvis songs. It reminds me of my childhood. I remember first kind of watching Elvis films when I was younger, and I always remember the scene in the movie when he sang Jailhouse Rock. And I think so it kind of takes me back to that time, and watching those, I think subconsciously it kind of probably helped to kind of form my early tastes in music as well.
Yeah, and hair,
and possibly hair as well. Because I went on. So the first person that I kind of really got into, after kind of listening to Elvis, was like Shakin' Stevens.
Yeah,
I was
a natural transition,
and I was massive into Shakin' Stevens.
Did you used to rock the double denim as well?
I think I did once or twice, maybe more than once or twice.
So I thought you'd be more of a Bay City Rollers fan.
Never really dug them. Never really dug them at all. And whilst, I'm always happy to like don the kilt, but I never quite saw the attraction with tartan trousers, to be honest.
So you're saying this particular track is, I mean, it is a tune, and we've been warming up to it this evening.
Yeah.
Just for the ladies and gentlemen, we've been going through the normal rituals. We've been listening to the tunes while we've been getting ready. I didn't have an ice bath. You didn't actually have an ice bath this evening.
No, I just had a cold shower.
Yeah. I had a cold shower too. I had to turn it right down. Your shower is very good, by the way. It was individual.
Thanks.
But hey, we're brothers. What can we say? So what actually was your favourite Elvis song? Or is there a favourite Elvis song?
So yeah, probably like I said, I mentioned this to you the other day. I'd love In the Ghetto, but
it's been ruined.
It's been ruined. Eric Cartman's like kind of destroyed
it. It's been ruined.
I like American Tail, actually. I like that American Story. and there's a couple. I always had a bit of a soft spot for blue suede shoes.
Yeah.
And actually, I could probably reel through a load of them. But I think that that like American Story. And I'll tell you what I loved. It got me right back into listening to more Elvis was when they released the it was only recently they released the Philharmonic, where they had sort of over his voice, the Philharmonic Orchestra had kind of put it together, and then they had some duets on there with people that were, you know, more famous now. I loved listening to that as well. Suspicious Minds.
Yeah.
And Can't Help Falling in Love with You. I think, yeah, those ones are always kind of standouts for me.
Yeah, so, I mean, these sort of tunes, they've stood the test of time, and with the bringing in the orchestral elements or even modern updates by different bands, it just prolongs the life of the tune and brings more heart and soul into it. But
ultimately, or maybe not ultimately, because that's only kind of half the story. Because my music tastes then kind of, you know, I wasn't very exposed to music, and Karen kind of quite regularly tells me this, that, you know, when she sort of first met me, I was listening to the likes of Hue and Cry. I was listening to the likes of I think I maybe had tried to hide Shaky by the time I joined the RAF, and I was listening to a little bit more like on the rap scene and stuff like that as well. But the reason that Jailhouse Rock sticks out apart from all of that is that something happened when I was at Buchan, and ultimately it kind of really changed things for me, and so when I hear this song, it kind of it gives me goosebumps now, because there was an incident in a WRAF block at Buchan where I opened my mouth to some firemen after the fact, when I had been in one of the WRAF blocks when I shouldn't have been in there, with a good friend of mine. No names mentioned, Mr. Osborne. And we were in the block for a laugh, really, because there was a 4-man room in there, and we thought that there were some of our pals in there having a bit of a party with some of the girls, and we thought we would go up, and we thought we would, you know, join them. However, they weren't for letting us in. And so when they wouldn't let us in, we went away, and we were really quiet for 5 minutes. And first of all, Oz grabbed one of the like handheld fire extinguishers, and we set it off, and we put it through the door. And there was kind of screaming and stuff from in the room, because they're still pretty powerful. But this wasn't good enough for me. So I went and wheaked the fire hose off the wall, reeled it out from like the top of the corridor. It was in the main sort of hall, at the top hall. And I brought it in, and those things pack a fair punch, like when you let them off. So we caused an awful lot of damage in that block. And anyway, down to my big mouth, I ended up, because I had been in a fair bit of bother at that point in time, silly little stupid things, as everybody knows, everybody that knows me, daft things, being late for work, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And ultimately I guess the number of charges that I'd had built up, this was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for like the CO, who it was, that eventually had to hear the charge. And he gave me 7 days detention. So 7 days in the nick. Now, through a real series of coincidences, I ended up, they were going to send me to Colchester, but because it was a bank holiday coming up, and because they would have to send me, and they were like, we can't send you down to Colchester because you're only going to end up being there for like 2 days. So they gave me 7 days, and they kept me in the Buchan cells. So to anybody that wrote me a letter when I was in the Buchan cells, I remember every single letter to keep my chin up.
And were there many letters?
Yeah, there was quite a few.
Wasn't like Harry Potter's letterbox where they're all coming flying through the...
There were quite a few. Some of the ones that stand out, like Steve Wilson, Chunk, sent me like escape plans, and he drew like, right, this is what you do. He was like, if you can get in here, you just need a sharp implement. He went, a spoon. I can get you a spoon from the mess. He was like, and you can tunnel out. He was like, and I'll be waiting for you out the back. So there were daft things like that. Kept me, there wasn't any, they weren't censoring them. They were just like, but it, in all seriousness, there was a bit of me that was like 7 days there, being marched to the mess, having to see my friends and not being able to speak to them, and knowing that there were other people looking at me down the nose and going, there's that little shit. He fucking deserves everything that he got. And I did. But actually, some of the looks, some of the, it all kind of, I remember it all. And that sort of feeling of, there was almost a part of me that kind of thought, crikey, Colchester might have been flipping easier. Although maybe not from the stories that I've heard. But anyway, Jailhouse Rock. So after 7 days, they let me out. And I always remember the first thing that I did was I went back to the block, Orkney block, and I had a can of Tennant Special stashed behind my telly. And I remember going back because I wasn't due into work until this. I think I was let out on like the Friday morning, so I wasn't due into work until like the Monday. So I went into my room and I grabbed this can, and as I kind of grabbed this can, as I was necking it, there was a knock on the door, and it was Oz, and he came in and he was like, and he said, right, he was like, come on, we're going down to the Sea View. We went down to Sea View, we drank probably Murphy's, I think was on tap down there, and then we ended up going downtown. So it was probably about mid-afternoon that they let me out, and I started to drink right away. So by the time that we hit the Granada, I was really well oiled, and I still to this day, it might have been Oz, it might have been Gordon, it might have been somebody else, but somebody told the DJ that I had just been let out of jail. I'd just been let out of prison. Now take into consideration that Peterhead Nick is just obviously up the road and holds some like real serious hardcore criminals, right? Like some real serious people. And they made this announcement over the tannoy, saying, we just wanted to say a big welcome back to Pinky. He's just been let out the Nick, and this song is just for you. And they played Jailhouse Rock. and everybody that I was standing with just pushed me onto the dance floor, and everybody else, like, it was like the flipping Red Sea part, and everybody came off the dance floor, and they left me on the dance floor, and I danced like Elvis to Jailhouse Rock. And that's why it's like, and I think ultimately, do you know what, the message, and every time I hear it now, not only do I think of all of that, but it's one of the things that kind of grounds me. Because one of the things that I say to people, quite frequently, and Karen has said to me, when we kind of talk about situations, it's one of those things, one of those songs that's a reminder of who I am. It's a reminder of like where I came from. It's a reminder to never forget your roots. Basically.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's
a great tale. I do believe I've heard a similar story on an audio book I've recently been listening to.
Quite possibly.
That story it's very similar to one that is from the Disappearing Scotsman.
Yeah.
That I was listening to. It's well worth a read if anyone can grab themselves a copy of the audiobook or the book. Haven't you got some sort of advertisement for it? Or are we too early?
Yeah,
Did
well,
anyone have 8:15 for advertisements of the book, The Disappearing Scotsman by Mr. Graeme Richardson?
I don't know whether or not we've. Let's have a look.
It's got to be on there somewhere. I'm sure Mr. Holmes is now slating us for shameless.
There you go. Grab your copy of The Disappearing Scotsman now at disappearingscotsman.com.
Absolutely. A fine read. And in the background, I thought it was sort of mood music, but it turns out it was your daughter Charlotte singing. So that's
in
great.
the audiobook, yeah.
Right, let's have a quick look at any comments. Anyone on here tonight? Oh, dear, it's got shot up already. Yes, you do your tech whiz. So who we got? Mr. Piers, HLC. My name's David, as he always says. Hi, Karen.
Oh, Mr. O'Neill.
Oh, Mr. O'Neill's on tonight. Frankie the Baser. Hammy.
He said
The Pinkster looks nervous for once. Well, let's say the interviewer has become the interviewee. Who knows what's going to happen tonight?
Yeah, you're right. You're right, Frankie. I said to Dave, I'm excited, but I am a little nervous still.
Oh, Hammy. Mr. Barlow. Elvis from his he always gets that in. Always gets in.
Chinese black died.
Karen.
Dancing skills. Yeah, look, Steve knows.
He knows.
Yeah, love American Story.
Absolutely.
It's a banging. As opposed to American Tail, I'm putting that down to the nerves. American Tail's like a little cartoon in it about a mouse. I think. Love Me Tender on the Bucky. Yeah, Hammer, you know it.
Jailhouse Rock, surely.
Yeah, Jailhouse Rock.
Mr. Back's in the hizzy.
Ski. Hey, brother. There we go. Drink.
Free the bucket.
It was, yeah. Pete Tuckerman and Yvette and Paul Blades.
Oh, my word. They're all.
And Julie as well. Oh, thank you all. Thank you for all tuning in.
Great to see you all this evening.
Well, thank you. And Karen Millward as well. Lovely to see you on. Well, not see you, but like see you on. You know what I mean. Thank you.
Right. Shall we continue? So, well, yeah. I mean, we've been talking. Obviously, that's your first tune. It was delved with a fantastic story that's also dipped into The Disappearing Scotsman. So, there were a couple of questions I had about your writing, because I know you're very much a poet, as well as now being an accomplished author. The big one is, how many poems do you actually think you've written? Not an exact figure, but
I reckon probably. I don't know. Probably. Oh, I don't know. Oh, gee whiz. A couple of hundred, maybe.
Wow. And how many poetry books have you got now?
So I released a book of poetry called FI Blues.
Yeah.
That was the first one that I did, kind of self-published that, and that was literally stories, poems that I wrote when I was in the Falkland Islands. And it was my first stab at publishing something. They weren't my first poems, but
so was this your first or second tour in the Falklands?
I wrote the poems. Oh, first.
As in, was this your drunk tour or your sober tour?
My sober tour.
That's 90. It was just before your.
Yeah, it was
the 30th birthday, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 2000, I think, or 99 into 2000.
Yeah, for those that don't know, obviously Graeme took a year off alcohol completely to raise money. I can't remember the charity now, which
I did. So I raised £2,000 for that back in the end. It went from my 29th birthday through to my 30th.
Yeah.
My 29th birthday, I went out in Glasgow with Karen and my sister Fiona, my brother David, and a mate of ours at the time. We went into this nightclub called the Savoy. It used to be, and it was like Friday nights were affectionately known as like Grab a Granny night. And we went in, I remember it well, because we were drinking Aftershock. I was ill, and the next day I had to, my sister's boyfriend had to kind of literally pull out the Clyde Tunnel into a lane that you weren't supposed to pull into, so I could jump out the car and be sick. And it was like, I've never seen it. It was like electric green. It's like fluorescent. And when I saw it, I was like, I am glad I'm not having a drink for another year. So yeah, I did a whole year off the booze. Hammy is one of the people that actually gave me the determination and the motivation to stay sober for a year, because when I told him at Wickham that I was going to do it, his first words were, "Fuck off! There's no way you'll last a week without booze, let alone a year." And I was like, "Well, mate, put your money where your mouth is." So I ended up raising £2,000 over the course of the year, and I split it, £1,000 to Bernardo's and £1,000 to NCH, National Children's Home. And the reason that I chose those two charities, ironically, was because I'd kind of been badgering Karen about like having children. And she kept saying to me, "But we ain't having kids whilst I still have one of, you know." It's like, you need to grow up first before you have any children. And that was kind of part of my, you know, I'm proving to myself more than anything else. But I was quite adamant at the time that I wanted to raise money for children's charities in some way, shape, or form. So yeah.
Well, hats off to you for that one. And also being able to complete a 4-month tour of the Falklands completely sober. Yeah. Anyone who's been down there, it's a beautiful place, but my God, you need a drink while you're down there.
Yeah, it wasn't easy, that one.
No. And the thing was, when you came back as well, you looked so much younger. It was just, well, that's what detoxing does for you, folks.
Yeah. It's why I don't drink that often now. I think it you know, I have a long, we'll come on to.
I mean, I've been introduced to the alcohol-free stuff tonight, which I'm drinking. So cheers, you're very good health, sir.
Yeah. He didn't like it, by the way. He said it's not my go-to.
It's not my go-to. No, it's pleasant enough, but I prefer the real thing. So, and obviously with the Disappearing Scotsman, which I must admit is phenomenal. It's a brilliant book. Very, very well written. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I know I complimented on it before, so I'm not going to drag it out now. But is there a Disappearing Scotsman 2?
Yes.
Is it in the planning? Is it in the writing stage? Is it on paper already and you're just waiting for the right time to release?
It's in my head.
Oh.
But it's going to be released in 2023.
It's got to be. You've
that's
actually put the date on.
That's the commitment. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I shall look forward to it, and I'll be in for a first edition. Yeah. First edition again.
I think. I mean, the reason that I did June 14th was when I launched the book last year, and the reason I did that was that obviously one of the main characters in the book, called the Sheriff, was inspired by both my grandfathers.
Yeah.
So I kind of combined, you know, some of their traits into this character, and the day that I released the book was actually my mum's dad's and my mum and dad's wedding anniversary. Lovely. So that was the day they got married, is the day that I released the book. So I think we'll probably do something similar, or maybe something related to my other grandfather.
Yeah.
Who was again like a real sort of
cool
inspiration in that character. So yeah, it's coming.
Watch this space, folks. You've heard it first. This is an exclusive from High G's in the deep depths of West Lothian.
It is.
And obviously that starts off with the character and Jim Sporrenson and his many endeavours, initially starting in the RF, where you started in the RF.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've got to delve into a little bit of this. Would you have said it was your grandparents that were your main inspiration, or what was it that actually went, I want the Air Force? And why the Air Force? Why not the Marines or the Navy?
It was my grandpa Ernie. He was my mum's dad, and so the last the kind of run up to me joining the Air Force, my gran, so my mum's mum had got ill. She got cancer, and we spent a lot of time in the last kind of 6 months to, but it was quick. 6 months to, was it 6 months to a year? Kind of feels like it was quick, but at the time, we saw her a lot, and she got kind of progressively, you know, worse when we saw her. But I kind of remember on the occasions that sort of before I joined, and talking to my grandpa. And it was in that sort of year before, because I kind of had got to the point at school where I was taking hires, of which none I passed, because I was skipping too many classes by that point in time. I'd got 8 O-levels at school, but I took the hires, and just I was skipping off classes. I was nipping into Paisley on the bus to our old record shop called Stereo One to buy 12 inches, and I was like around the back of the theatre smoking weed with some of the guys that may or may not watch this. So there kind of had come a time, and I did not know what I wanted to do when I left school. So that the bits that are in the book that touch on, you know, me suggesting that I wanted to be like a fireman, that was true. And it was my gran that put me off that. She said, you know, and there was a couple of other things that I'd sort of wanted to be, but ultimately when I'd spoken to my grandpa, and it was his tales of India that really intrigued me. And so ultimately what sealed the deal was I'd gone to a party in Erskine, which is where I went to school, but not where I lived. And I had met a guy who had joined the RAF. He'd been through his basic training, and he told me that he was doing radar training to be something called an aerospace systems operator. It's a guy called Ross McLean. Right now, the irony is that I then I'd already started speaking to the Careers Information Office, and when I went up, I'd initially wanted to be a techie. They told me my aptitude test weren't high enough to be a techie. And I said, what about an aerospace systems operator? Just because I had spoken to the guy, and they went, oh yeah, your tests are high enough for that. And I was like, well, I'll have a bit of that then.
Well, it's an exclusive trade. For those who don't know, aerospace systems operator, just think of Navy SEALs for the Air Force. It's as simple as that. It's the elite, the creme de la creme, the best of the best. So
yeah, getting shit-faced and lying in, sleeping in for work, maybe.
Yeah. And obviously you joined up in 1989.
Yeah.
You were the course behind.
Yeah, either one. Yeah, the course 295. I was.
Oh no, because I was 292. So
yeah, 3 courses behind ultimately. Yeah.
And obviously our first meeting was a bit of a shocker. So there I am, senior man of the course, and I can't remember who came down to my room, but they said you're needed, and I'm like, okay. So I come down to the room which wasn't yours, but you were in.
No.
And you were in there with Mr. Patrick Ben.
Yeah.
And for some reason the pair of you were naked, and there was a bin in the middle of the floor, and the pair of you were trying to see who could hit the bin first by pleasuring yourselves. And I'm just like, this is above my pay grade. And walks out.
Is that really what happened?
Yeah, but there was also an iron full of urine.
That was Chris Hill's iron.
But then I got called back down, and this time you were fully clothed, and so was Pat, but the bin was now on fire. I didn't realise that Harry Monk was flammable. But there you go, kids. You know, there's one to know. And that was my introduction to the young Pinkster. After that, we went our separate ways. I went off to Sunny Nita's Head, you know, where it's like Miramar of the Scopy world. And you went off to Sunny Buchan.
I did.
Where the wind bloweth strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how long did you do at Buchan? Well, how long did you last at Buchan on the first tour?
5.5 years. I was only there once. 5.5 years. I think they'd had enough of me when they punted me to Nita's Head. But yeah, I did 5.5 years. A 5.5 years that I think when I look back on it now, 5.5 years that kind of made me who I am today. 5 years of, you know, meeting friends that will stick in my mind forever. Meeting some of the best friends that I could ever have, you know, met, that still have today, and just some absolutely wild experiences. And of course, you know, I was 18 when I arrived. I didn't know how to play the game at all. And all I knew was just, I just wanted to have fun. I just wanted to have fun. And I think I didn't really, at that point in time, I didn't really care about anything, I don't think. And it wasn't like consciously, but it was just like nothing really mattered. And I think when I see my 14-year-old daughter, Charlotte, now, and I look at her at 14, she kind of reminds me a little bit of how, in fact, she's even worse than, you know, than I was. But yeah, I mean, that 5.5 years, I've got some stories there. It's probably a good time to go into my next tune.
Let's break into the next tune,
because the next song, obviously, you know, I think everybody knows Karen, and ultimately, I think the first couple of years that I spent up there, I was charged so many times. I got in so much trouble. And like I said, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I think what kind of changed after that, you know, Jailhouse Rock, after kind of coming out, I realized at that point in time that if I was to get charged again after that, I was on my way out. And I think starting to see Karen and a lot of people, Jock Thompson included, and probably everybody that knew me at the time, kind of said, you know, she'll be the making of that man, that boy. I don't think anybody called me a man at that point. She'll be the making of that boy. And you know, there's a wonderful bit actually that I still love to read, and it's not my book. It's in a book that I published actually. That Steve O'Neill's book, From Kosovo to Kandahar, A March Through the Ranks, or
another damn fine read.
Yeah,
well done, Mr. O'Neill.
There's a bit that he wrote in that about his first encounter with me, was when Jock Thompson kind of pointed me out and pretty much said, you know, that girl will be the making of that boy. And I don't think Steve knew who I was at the time. And ultimately, you know, she did. She kept me on the straight and narrow. You know, we got engaged, and after sort of seeing each other for just over 2 years, we got married. So the next song is not Diamonds and Pearls by Prince, but that was our song. That is our song. But it's not the song that should have been our first dance when we got married. But like an idiot, I forgot to take the CD down and give it to the DJ.
Schoolboy error.
So I didn't. The one thing that I was asked to do for our wedding, apart from turn up, and I very nearly didn't turn up, because the night before the wedding was Frank Bruno against Lennox Lewis, and all of the guys that had come down from Buchan were all staying in Saltburn. So, and please forgive me if I forget anybody. Marky P, Hammy, John Kane, Gordon was down, Tomo, Cass was down, the Macmillans were down, and so Joe was with Karen, and Stu was with the lads, Richie Bull, Horse, I said Marky and Ross Conlon Doyle, amongst others, Paddy Neal. Oh crikey, if I've forgotten anybody, please, you know, forgive me. But the point here is, the night before, I had asked if we could have the room that we were actually using for wedding reception to watch the fight. And they said, yeah, it wasn't on until 1 a.m. So whilst Karen had like a quiet night and got tucked up, I was, and there was, so my best man and a couple of my mates from home, they'd come down from Scotland as well. And they may well have brought some jazz cigarettes as well, which after a skinful with the RAF lot that were down, I was out the back having a bit of a talk. And was absolutely knackered in the morning, and my nephew's jumping on my head to get me out of bed in the morning. I very nearly, didn't make it. And when Karen saw me at the altar, she gave me that look that I'd seen so many times before that kind of said, if this wasn't our wedding day, you'd be so fucking dead. So anyway, our wedding day, and still such a wonderful, wonderful day. We should have danced to Diamonds and Pearls. I didn't have the song. And when they said, we'll be playing the first dance in 10 minutes, I kind of looked at Karen and I was like, and smiled and thought, shit, I don't have the music. It's okay, the DJ will have it. So I ran over to the DJ and I said, you've got Diamonds and Pearls by Prince, right? You're fucking joking, mate, right? He said. I was like, no, you've got to have it. And he says, I did say anything, specific, you need to bring it for me. I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? So I turned round, Ross Conlon Doyle, right? God bless him, rest in peace, my man. He's standing at the bar. I looked at him and he went, are you all right? And I went, no. I don't have any music for our first dance. And he was like, what? And he went, okay, let's sort this. So we went over and we said to the DJ, can we look at what you do have? And he went, of course you can. So we looked through it and Ross is going, right, he's going, well, what sort of love songs do you like? And I was like, or what songs are you and Karen? And I was like, I don't know, Prince, that's the one. I don't know what else. I can't think. And he said, well, what about Nat King Cole, When I Fall in Love? And I was like, yes, I love that. Karen loves that. That's good. We'll go with that. So we're rifling through and we're like, you must have When I Fall in Love by Nat King Cole. And the DJ was like, no, mate. He's like, hold on. So he goes through and he was like, I do have this. And he produces Rick Astley's version of When I Fall in Love. And I just said to him, that will have to do.
Nothing against Rick Astley, but he's no Nat King Cole.
So I think, that story, obviously it's my first dance with Karen. For our 25th wedding anniversary, I had like a print of like a record and in it the lyrics to When I Fall in Love, and the venue for our wedding. I put it up in there, and luckily it's just the lyrics. It doesn't say anything about Rick Astley, but that's why Rick Astley. And I think the other thing about that song is that it kind of, I always remember Ross when I think back to his help, and he's not with us any longer. But maybe I've mentioned most of the people that I remember that were there, and if I was to sit with a bit more time, I'd kind of reel off more. All of our friends and family that were at our wedding. It was such a special day for Karen and I. But thinking about people, that's a long time ago. 28 years now.
28 years.
And it always not only reminds me of that story and forgetting that song and kind of coming to that, but it also reminds me of the importance of friends and family. Absolutely. And how that we should never forget. And I think ultimately a little bit of it kind of it kind of brings me to why I do what I do now.
Yeah.
Because it's that you know, that notion to never ever forget the people that have played a part in your life, whether they're here or not now, and ultimately have made us the people that we are.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, well, you must have been doing something right for Karen to stay with you for 28 years. I mean, this day and age, that is some achievement. So that's fantastic. And she is a wonderful woman. I've known Karen longer than you because she was on the course in front of me.
yeah.
Even with her big Bon Jovi perm hair back in the day, which I'm sure she won't mind me saying this evening. Hi, Karen. You're a lovely lady. But anyway, I mean, obviously, we are now in our 50s. God, can you believe it? We're in the 50s. And as you said, we've started to lose a few friends along the way. So two absent friends.
Yeah, I think so.
And at the moment,
yeah.
Cheers, guys. Two absent friends.
Cheers.
But that is a wonderful story. And what you're saying about friends and family and making the memories, there's no truer point. I mean, you know, take for instance your sister Fiona. She taught me how to play Bop It. And I'm still really good at Bop It. So thanks, Fee. Much appreciated. But, you know, we have gone through so much, not just in the Air Force, but subsequently.
Yeah.
And, you know, going through the COVID with lockdown, you know, you started this monthly Zoom meeting for everyone just to get together. And, you know, I mean, was there an inspiration for you actually doing that? Or what actually said, I need to do this?
So I think where that came from was, I mean, again, I'm not wanting to suggest by any stretch of the imagination that any of us could have predicted what was going to happen. But in the January, so people remember I started doing like Facebook Lives and kind of talking to people and asking questions about just, and again, at that point in time, it was kind of around just, you know, sharing a bit of a story, but asking people how they were, and kind of starting to join the dots and connect people and reconnect people, but also, you know, give a little bit of pause for thought on a few kind of choice subjects. If people weren't happy, if people were kind of struggling, and this was before, you know, before pandemic hit. So this was around about sort of November 19, I think, that I kind of started doing this. And I think, would it be November 19? I think it probably would have been. It was kind of on the back. So in August of the same year, I think was when I caught up with my good friend, was it Mr. Back in Brighton, for the first time. I'd seen him in ages, and we had some really good chats. We'd spoken a lot on the phone and FaceTime before there, and I think being reconnected with him, and we'd kind of spoken about that connection and sort of what he was trying to do with Loft 55 at the time. It was about sort of bringing people together, about that physical connection, and for him through clothing. And I kind of had, you know, wanted to try and do the same, because of, I think, my journey, and I think, I'll come on to like what that journey was in a little bit, but I think more specifically the inspiration had kind of taken seed already from that November, and so the idea that I'd had an idea on the physical side of things in January of 2020, after speaking with my barber about just the state of like almost, if you want to call it, like mental health crisis, you know, the world was kind of suffering from. I mean, even before the pandemic had hit, and you know, just how much visibility and, you know, was being given to people suffering with mental health problems. My barber and I'd seen this little like a little poster on his wall that said, "What's shared in the barber stayed in the barbers," and it's a quote from Bernie Mac, who's like an American kind of comic, and we kind of got through talking about that. I'd said, you know, it would be great if we could have a safe space for, and again, this was through speaking to Ali, it'd be great if we could have a safe space where guys could just come along and talk about, you know, things that they're worried about, things that problems that they might have, because surely other guys will have been through it. And it was just encouraging that, you know, guys to come and talk about their feelings, come and talk about the problems, because we've been taught since we were very, very young, you know, you just man up is the phrase. You man up and you just get on with it. And whilst I, you know, I wholeheartedly agree that like getting on with it and, you know, has absolutely its place, that doesn't mean that we should isolate ourselves when we're having a hard time. So we ran that meeting. We did two actually. We ran one in January, and then we ran one in the February. So we ran 1 month after, and then in the March, not long after, you know, having been at an Embrace gig, boom, lockdown. And so I think I had planned to have another meeting in the barbershop in March. So what I thought, first of all, was, well, why not create a group? And it was, again, came from conversations with my barber, you know, with Ali, with yourself as well at the time. And I created this Facebook group called the Brotherhood. And we'd obviously been doing the kind of the Belfast thing where we'd been kind of catching up, and so it just kind of like brought the whole thing together. And I thought, well, I'll do monthly catch-ups on Zoom so that people can connect and just chat. Now that, as it happened, that took two different paths. One, which was the Brotherhood, which was just meeting for like men. And those they had limited success, but actually each one we ran had, you know, between half a dozen and a dozen guys come on. First few we had like a guest speaker to talk about stuff that could help people with their well-being. And then when I started doing the military ones, they'd kind of just, you know, I don't say exploded. We hadn't enough thousand, but each month, kind of pretty much throughout 2020, as you know, we spent the first Friday of every month ultimately catching up over a drink on Zoom or, you know, whatever, and sharing stories, and, you know, taking people's mind off of what was going on in the world. And I think the feedback that we had from it was amazing, and it just gave me such a buzz to be able to continue to connect people like that. So and ultimately that is kind of what's led to this, because the more that I spoke to other people and the more that other people came on, so there was always, you know, and you all know who you are, some of you are on here and some aren't, but when we had those Zoom calls, there were always some familiar voices that would come on, and there were always people that were keen to talk, and there were always people that you knew if they were on, Becky Kinroy, that nobody else was going to get a word in, right?
Becky.
All joking aside, right, there were a lot of people that came on and were quite happy. And we were speaking about this earlier, that were just happy to sit and listen and see some old faces and old friends and hear the stories. But those that sat, you know, quietly, I kind of had thought to myself, it would be great to hear some of their stories as well. And ultimately,
that was the birth of the JFDI podcast.
Yeah.
But going back to those Zoom meetings, obviously you used to do these little breakout rooms.
Oh yeah.
So you were in control of the whole shaboodle. And I mean, I personally remember one very good one. I was in a fantastic conversation with the one and only Stevie O'Neill. And then I get booted into a different room. And I'm like, I was just in a conversation with Stevie. Don't do this to me. But no, they were phenomenal. And it was great seeing. And obviously, we've been catching up with different people. And once again, it's got people talking again. The guys and girls that haven't spoken for years are now getting back in contact. And that's only a good thing.
Yeah, of course it is. And you know what? It gives me a massive buzz. It
Yeah.
gives me such a buzz. It's like, you know, the Saturday Night Fight Club thing. I have to give a shout out to these guys. So and not every single one of them was in the Air Force as well. So started off on Twitter, pretty much myself, Gary Barlow, Mark Osborne. We had on there, and so there was a mate of Oz's called Robbie. And yeah, that was kind of us. And joined us, came in and joined us, was Oz's brother, Stu.
Mm-hmm.
So that was Saturday Night Fight Club. And what we basically, we were watching boxing. Every Saturday night, we would watch the boxing, and we would go on Twitter. And depending on how much we'd had to drink, we would slag the boxers off. We would commentate on the boxing, but we did most of it within. Did we? No, we kind of, yeah, we did a lot of it on the public forum. We weren't rude. We were just kind of, you know, pretending to be boxing pundits. And to be honest, I think most of us would agree that, like, if you look at some of the professionals, not blowing our trumpets, like, but we tend to get it right. Between us, there's always one of us that gets it pretty much spot on. Because we've all loved boxing, and that's kind of how we came together. So there was a fight came about. Carl Frampton, Belfast boy, was fighting Scott Quigg, Manchester boy. And my first reaction was, we should all get together for this fight.
And that was the fight that was in Manchester.
So this fight was in Manchester. It was built up. You know, it was seen as a 50-50 fight. And we were like, we've got to have this in Manchester. And the spanner in the works was Mr. Barlow, just immediately, within seconds.
Always
actually,
Mr. Barlow.
Within seconds, went, well, I'll not be coming. And that's, you know, so again, big shout out to the man.
Yeah. Lovely chap.
You know, Gary, listen, if it wasn't for, and so for anybody that doesn't know, I'm not going to go into that, but watch my podcast with Gary. And you'll hear about it if you don't know, you know, Gary can't travel. And you know, try as we may, Manchester wasn't going to happen, but he didn't bring a problem to us. He brought a solution and said, you can come over here, come and watch it in Carl Frampton's backyard.
Yeah.
And immediately we all just went, fucking right, we are going to do that. Because he and then Gary said, well, actually, I'll take you and watch it in Frampton's new, like, local. And we were like, he goes, because it's kind of like a really decent pub, and it's like 10 minutes from where I stay. And we were like, we're there. So we went, and now that first meeting, that first reunion was the first time that a lot of us had seen each other in like 25 years. We'd been reconnected through the power of social media. But 6 of us went on that trip to watch the boxing. There was Gary, there was Oz, there was Oz's brother, there was myself, and then 2 guys that don't give 2 shits about boxing, and they won't mind me saying that either. But they do like beer, and they do like catching up with their mates, Mr. Gordon Clark and Andy O'Hare.
Yeah,
we're like, we are there. So the 6 of us caught up that year. We did it again the next year, and again, and then there was a break, and then in 2020, the last time that we caught up, we had got to the, you know, there were like 15 of us, and you were there, and Ali was there, and Mo was there, and
so 2019.
No, it was
2020. Yeah, it was.
So that I think that is just, you know, that for me, organizing that, seeing the look on people's faces, just seeing people reconnecting. I mean, it was great to do those Zoom calls, but
you can't beat it live, folks.
No, and I always said that the Zoom calls weren't there to replace the physical connection. They were there to remind people how important that physical connection is.
Yeah.
And just doing that and being able to bring people together like that gives me such a buzz. Always.
So we're aiming for next year then.
Fucking right we are. We've already got a date if anybody's interested.
So I mean, we're learning the deepest, darkest parts of Mr. Pinkster, but there's more music, surely, because there's the JFDI podcast is about tunes above all else. Should we just have a quick look through the comments as well?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know how you do this.
Oh, look. Oh yes, we're obviously talking about my marriage here.
Yeah,
Paul Blades. Blades. He said yes, you did. I lost a partner in crime. Hammy said George will still come after you. Cast your mind back, Pinky. Freitag, Mr. Penn. No, Hammy. I suggested that. Maybe I did suggest that I had a wee talk on a debate outside the pub when I was in the RAF. But I didn't do what I was accused of at Buchan. No, I didn't do that. That was all alleged. Anyway, Tina Hodgson, the Hodgson stare. Yeah, by the way, I don't really like Prince. Well, this is the things that she's had to put up with, you see. Thank you, Dave. Need to resurrect the Zoom calls, Hammy says. Quarterly was great to catch up with everyone. Yeah, well, we're gonna get one on soon, because we're gonna have a catch up and talk about the plans for next year. Mr. Osborne's in the house. Like your style.
We was Rob Davey.
Yeah.
We were. We always have such delightful conversations, and we were parted on terrible terms.
Yeah.
So, cracking on with the music, what is your next tune, sir?
Next song is a Roachford song.
Yes.
And it's actually a song called Tomorrow. Now, people that know me from back in the day will remember me blaring out Cuddly Toy in my room. And I think from back in the day, like let's say at school, when I used to nick off, when I would like I would say dogging it. That's what we used to say at school. I can't say that now, can I? I won't dogging it at 15. Skiving or playing truant, I think is the correct term. But when I went to a record shop called Stereo One in Paisley, it was to buy Roachford 12 inches. And so I'd always loved him. It was my first gig ever. I went to see him at the Barrowlands when I was 17. And that
rules out one of my later questions of what was your first gig.
Yeah, it was. I was 17, starry-eyed. I went to the Barrowlands. The two support acts were an Irish band called The Four of Us, who probably nobody, with the exception of Mark Osborne, will know who they are, because again, it was one of the first kind of connections when we first met at Buchan. Talking about music and what was going on, and like I say, until I got to Buchan, my taste in music was Roachford and Shaky. I think a bit of Simple Minds and Deacon Blue, Hue and Cry, and maybe Hipsway and Love and Money, a lot of Scottish bands. But Roachford kind of mesmerised me at that gig. And I remember he was late on stage that night because he had to fly up from London to Glasgow because they'd just recorded Top of the Pops. And I think it was Cuddly Toy they'd recorded for Top of the Pops. But that's not the song. But that and people might remember that song. But Roachford in general, I think of that song. I remember again. He's watching. I remember some of the dancing, like children, Bladesy and I, with flipping hairbrushes in the block, dancing and singing to Roachford, Cuddly Toy, and then again. Yourself and shared love of Roachford, Oz and myself shared love of Roachford, and these are gigs yet to happen. We've spoken about seeing him at the Jazz Cafe in London,
in Camden.
Oz and I were meant to go and see him together in Aberdeen, and we still haven't got round to doing it. But I think we're going to crack it next May. So yeah, I've always loved Rochford, and that song is kind of that song is one of my favourite songs. But this is the emphasizes that the JFDI podcast, it's songs that are part of your DNA, songs that have kind of defined you or part of your life. And Tomorrow came out, so it's a later album. Let's say it's not on the Rochford Files, which is like his best of. It's on an album called River of Love. Is it River of Love or Word of Mouth? Sorry, take it back. The album's called Word of Mouth. And Tomorrow is the second song on the album, and it came out in 2008. And in 2009, I went to India for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to India 2 years in the trot, and quite a lot happened in my life in those 2 years. So I think, I'll give you a little bit of light humor here, because in a second, my boss at the time said to me, Graeme, what can I tell you about India? I can't, she said. I've been, and until you've seen a grown man take a shit in the street, you can't appreciate what India has to offer, and how much it smacks you in the face.
She'd obviously never been to Peterhead.
No. So I went out to India the first year, and I remember coming back from India, and kind of thinking to myself, whoa, the poverty that we saw out there, the people living in like puddles, under like motorway flyovers, people living under like corrugated iron, and we were in like a 5-star hotel work, and literally with like full security perimeter. And actually, you remember the India bombings that took place not that long after the ones that you had kind of witnessed in London. And I went out I was out in India on one of the anniversaries of that, and it was kind of quite eerie because the security was ramped up. But I think then, because of the luxury that we were in the hotel, and seeing the contrast between that and the poverty that the country had, and then we went to the gateway to India, where there were little girls begging, and one girl's face is stuck in my mind. I can still see it now. The girl was she must have only been about 10 or 11 herself, and she had a baby in her arms. And she came up to me asking for money, and I wanted to give her some money. And the guys that I was with from Tata, from TCS, the IT consultancy firm that we were out visiting, they said, you can't give them any money, because as soon as you give them money, they're gonna swarm around you. And by the way, what you don't know is that this is an industry, this is a business. That girl's not getting any of that money. There are people that are putting her on the street. And I was like, it chokes me to kind of to even think about this. And so they rushed us away. I've got video footage of me at the gateway to India, to a song by Richard Ashcroft called Born Again. And I genuinely felt like I came home. I went for like a bit of spiritual sort of enlightenment. I was taken on a number of trips. We went to visit a Buddhist monastery out there. We went to we visited the Ganges at a place called Haridwar, which is like, it was way north of a place called Dehradun, which is, you're knocking on, this is like about 5 hours north of Delhi. So you're only talking about 3 or 4 hours from the foothills of the Himalayas, really. So I went in the Ganges. My mum told me before I went, she was like, do not drink that water or you'll come home with flipping hepatitis. And yet I went in, And the video of me in the Ganges on YouTube is probably too much for people because I didn't have any swimming shorts with me, so I was in my boxers.
It's worse than you in the ice bath.
And oh yeah, because I'm just like that. And as I come out, there's a Swami, one of the kind of spiritual gurus. He's sitting on the side, and he said, "Take some water and put it on your lips, and you will be purified. You will be spiritually whole." And I just remember my mum going, "Don't put that." and here's the guy that I worked with at the time, who lived not far from there. I was with guys from work, a guy called Tommy Wilson, Vikas Gurung, who I worked with at the time. And he was ducking himself. He was like straight in. And I just remembered my mum's words. So I came out. There was something kind of very, very spiritual about that trip. But ultimately, I kind of came back, and I said to myself and other people at the time, I'm never ever going to take anything for granted again, because when you see how people live in this country that have nothing, people that are born in this country who have nothing, in reality, in comparison to people that are born in other countries that really have nothing, it woke me up in a way that I don't think that I've looked back since then. So that's the first bit. But before I went out the second time, something happened to me on a night out in Glasgow. It was a mate of mine. I was working at JP Morgan. No, I'd left JP Morgan. And my boss at JP Morgan, and the guys that I worked with at the time. So my boss was a guy called Wilson Gray. I worked with guys called Stephen Manning and Sean Gold that I kept in touch with. In fact, Stephen and Sean are my partners in BAMS, which is our whiskey investment, and that's another story. But Wilson was leaving JP Morgan. I'd left and had started working at Sky at the time, and I was going to India, with Sky. But it was his leaving do. Before it was his kind of leaving do, and I think it was in between those trips, because the Rochford album was 2008, and those India trips were 2009 and 2010. I went out on this leaving do, had way too much to drink, and basically to the point where, so you remember in the RAF, right, that military family, no man left behind. It's like you go out and
went out all out, the whole squadron went out.
And what I came to my great, I think that night I had said goodbye to my pals that I was with, and I was supposed to be staying with my brother in Glasgow. We'd poured out of this bar at about 2 a.m, and I was walking down to my brother's. He lived on Argyle Street, and basically I was attacked. I don't remember it. What I remember is I think generally around that time I had started to drink more. So the other thing that kind of happened around that time was Ross, who I mentioned earlier on, had died. That kind of hit me hard. That was the first of my mates that had gone. And I was at Sky. I was in a great job. I had by this point in time, 2 wonderful girls, great wife. But I was drinking more often, and this night it was like the straw that brought the camel's back. As far as my family were concerned, my mum, my dad, and Karen, they were like, enough is enough. And on this night, the attack that took place, there were the 2 guys. What I do remember is I remember the moments just before what happened. I was walking down the road. There were 2 guys coming the other way. They were, shouting at me at what I thought was banter, and I was like, "Hey, all right, how are you doing?" And I remember them passing me, but I remember that sort of out of my peripheral vision catching, like, hold on, they've not walked all the way past, something's that, and I turned round, and it was literally when I turned round, I was headbutted, and the next thing that I remember was very, very briefly being woken up by a policeman, and I was on the ground, so I was unconscious for a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I woke up. I don't really remember my head throbbing. I was in a bit of a bad way. My nose was across my face. I had, I was pretty damaged, and my hands, ironically, I was all cut and bruised here as well. So I don't know what I'd done with them.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd gone down battling in some way, but that resulted in Karen's mum was here, and Karen had to come pick me up in the hospital. And the weeks that kind of followed that, I realised my mum, there was like a family intervention. My mum and dad were like, this needs to stop.
Mm-hmm.
We can't go on like this. They were really good, and they pulled together information for, like, places that I could get help, and but I was stubborn, and I didn't want to kind of go and seek help. And so Karen, I think, people have said she stuck by me through thick and thin, and this was like, I don't know how she, or why she stayed with me after that, but she did. And I kind of vowed to, like, sort my shit out at that point in time. And this Rochford song was then, at that time, it was like a recovery song. And so every time I hear this song, I just think of all of that. But I've got to read the lyrics out. So tomorrow starts, and I've got it on here because I know them, but I don't want to get them wrong. I kind of got to that point where I was like, I can't go on living my life like this any longer, because look at the people that I'm hurting. I mean, for me, going out and getting drunk and getting in a state in the past, I'd never seen the effect on other people. I just thought that it was me. And this kind of woke me up, and it was like, what, this self-destruct mission that you're on is having a massive impact on other people. And initially, when this intervention happened, I got really angry. I got really angry and really defensive after a little bit of time. And Karen used to say I'd go through these phases of, being remorseful to start with, and then I'd be like really shy and quiet, and then after a few weeks of, like, hanging my head in shame, I'd get really angry at the world, because, and this song helped me to kind of get over that. And the lyrics that I'll read, not the whole song, but just the opening of that song, and every time I hear this, it gives me goosebumps. So it starts, say goodbye to bitterness that's living in your heart. Say goodbye to resentment that's tearing you apart. Say goodbye to feeling guiltiness for something in your past. If you could live with no regret, you will be free at last. How do you make tomorrow better than today if you always live your life stuck in yesterday? Everybody has those crazy days when you feel under, but we got to get over. Everybody has those crazy days when you feel under, but we got to get over. And that's why it's that Rochford song. And I know that's a long story, and I'm glad I got through it without too much of a crackle, because I think what that has taught me and shown me is that some of us kind of go through life guilty, feeling guilty, but projecting that guilt onto other people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you heard that saying, hurt people. So when you're not happy and content with your own life, you blame other people for your problems. You blame, you know, absolutely anything, and you know, you blame. And the reality there is that until you look inside, I don't think that you'll ever find kind of true peace, true happiness, and it's ultimately where I've gone, is inside of myself to find my real purpose in life. And yeah, that's why it's Rochford.
Well, I mean, wow. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, that's very deep. Yeah. But again, it shows the strength of character, not just within yourself, but also within Karen and your family. You know, you need that strength. Sometimes, you know, you need the strength, you need the encouragement, you need someone to stand next to you, you need a shoulder to cry on, you need someone to listen.
Yeah.
What a fantastic couple, Graeme and Karen. I'm sure everyone out there is applauding you right now. No, that's absolutely fantastic. And what a story.
Yeah, and do you know what? It's a brilliant song. I mean, let's not forget that, like, this is about the music, and that song, it's an absolute tune. It's not, you know, there's some real deep lyrics in there, and it does kind of like every time, again, it's under my skin.
Yeah.
That song, when I hear it, it gives me goosebumps, but it's a tune. And you know, go and listen to it and turn it up loud.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't like Rochford, why the hell not?
He is one talented musician.
Yeah. He's got the best voice that I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Ever.
But as I said, you know, we still plan one day when he's playing there, shoot down to London and watch him in the Jazz Cafe in Camden. So, Mr. Rochford, if you're listening, if you're into podcasts, if you're into the JFDI podcast, please get on stage at the Jazz Cafe in London and we'll come down and see you. Or take a trip up here to High G's, the most exclusive club in West Lothian, and come on the JFDI podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Obviously, you read the lyrics, and you know you can hear the poetry in the lyrics, which obviously,
yeah.
I'm going back a little bit to your poetry, because you did me a fantastic favour once. I'm not a poet, but I once wrote a poem after my father passed away. I still cannot read that poem out loud, and you very kindly read it out for me and actually posted it to me, and that blew me away. So thank you very much for that. But
it was an honour. It was a great tribute for someone who's not a poet, by the way. That was an amazing.
I've had my night. This is your night. Out of all your poems, is there one that stands out above the rest where you're like, that was the poem, or do you think it's still within you?
If we all woke up at the same time, would the world be a better place? Would the world, that one.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be more interesting if everyone had the same face? It would be different. You can't deny that, but who knows what might once have been. You cannot be certain of much these days, but the future as yet is unseen. If a crazy cat ruled the country, would you find it a little obscene? If an antelope drove the blue bus to the square, would you stop him and say it was green? Would it be weird to say that radios talk, electric fans tick-tock? I'm going to get lost on it. I can't remember all of the words. But basically, that's just the poem called Funked World.
Yeah.
And that one, I love that poem. I've kind of, since it's grown. But yeah, that I think is that's my favourite. But there's a whole batch that I've written in the last 10 years. That one was written, I think, when I was at Wickham.
I think it was, yeah. I remember when you first told me that one. It was,
but I've written another batch in the last 10 years.
So we're looking at another book.
Yeah, there's a poem. There's a poem called "Cracking the Pavement," which I really love. That's kind of quite. I think it kind of takes a lend from like some of the grander sort of songs that I like. It's like one of my, I'd say it's a bit of an epic. It's quite long, kind of takes like about 4.5 minutes to recite, but I like that. And there's one that I did after a year in London when I was working at Sky called Leap of Faith, that I love as well. You know, sometimes, and that one's literally about, you know, taking a leap of faith. It's at the time I was doing a job where there didn't look to be too much advancement in the role that I was doing, but there was an opportunity to take a side move. Yeah, and it cut a long story short, I decided to do it. It meant actually almost like dropping a level of seniority, but actually the amount of responsibility that I had increased. It meant I'd spend like a year away from the girls, 3 days a week.
Yeah.
I would fly down to London, like I'd be up at 4:30 on a Tuesday morning and fly back at like 8 o'clock on a Thursday night.
But you got to occasionally see me.
I did. I occasionally got to see you, and I wrote a poem about that year called Leap of Faith, about sometimes just having to push yourself out your comfort zone and do something that, you know, you're not sure what the outcome's going to be. So yeah, those ones are, I think, amongst my favourites.
And you know, I mean, obviously, when you left the Air Force, that was a big leap of faith as well, because you're leaving an institution where I mean, how long you were in for? How long did you do? Was it 12 years or
12 years in the end? Yeah,
12 years. So you obviously Buchan 5.5, then down to Neatishead for how long did you do at Neatishead?
3 years. Was it about? So we were posted to Neatishead in 95.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about Neatishead in my last song.
Right.
And we left Neatishead in 1998.
Where we met up again at High Wycombe.
Where we met up again at High Wycombe. And then I left in 2001.
Yeah.
So it was like 11 and a half. Yeah, it was a bit like 11 and a half. Well, it was bang on 12 years, actually.
Yeah. And I mean, was that your plan to actually leave at the 12-year point, or were you hoping to go on, or was it just that was the right time?
I kind of had to make a decision. I was working in the I was working in a small cell, missile warning at High Wycombe at the time, and there was a posting. So I had been out on detachment to Colorado Springs, out to like Buckley Air Force Base, and I'd spent a week out there for a conference, and I knew that I was next on the list for an overseas posting there. But I also knew that, like Karen and I was kind of hoping that we might have a baby. And I had been thinking about coming out, and I kind of knew that if that posting was to happen, that would be another 3 years potentially. And I just weighed everything up. And I think, although the temptation to stay, and you know, because I'd already been promoted, which is in actual fact, you know, I left Neatishead, I went to Wycombe as a corporal, which, you know, but 95% of people that kind of, you know, knew me and met me at Buchan, that was never going to happen.
Yeah.
So I'd gone there and been promoted, and having that time there, I'd enjoyed it, but I had got to the point in time where there was just an inkling that I needed a little bit more freedom.
Yeah.
That I'd kind of towed the line. I'd began to play the game. I had been promoted, and I'd loved every minute of it. But I was just getting a little bit frustrated with like some of the manning decisions at High Wycombe, and some of being told that I couldn't do things at a certain point in time. You know, I think which resonates with us all, and that's kind of part of the military, isn't it? You suck it up. But there were some things that just, you know what, I decided, you know what, I've had an absolutely brilliant innings. It's been fantastic. I also met quite a lot of people at Wycombe that had stayed in too long, who were really bitter. And no names mentioned. But when you speak to people that have not got a good word to say about, you know, the military, and an institution that's like giving you a way of life, provided a way of life for you, and asked, certainly asked of you in return, but you don't need for anything. You're told where to go, you're told when to work, you're even given your uniform. They'll give you a flipping married quarter if you want. They'll give you your food if you want it. My God, you don't need to do anything. You can be so dependent. And I think that I had got to the point in my life where I was like, there's something else. And it wasn't a case of there's something better, but it was like, there's just something that offers a bit more freedom.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to leave before I became bitter.
Yeah.
And so
possibly was the best time to leave.
I think so. Yeah, I think it was. I think I had a brilliant time, and I won't hear a bad word of it. I had a wonderful time. I had a wonderful 12 years. And I can't speak, highly enough of the time that I had. What is it that you said about leaving the police?
Oh,
you missed the clowns,
not the circus. Yeah.
Yeah. The people.
Yeah.
People are what, is important.
Well, the buildings are just bricks and mortar, and the places change, but no matter where you've gone, the people have always stuck with you, and they've been on the end of a phone or the end of a screen, and social media again has helped people stay in contact. But above all, it's who've influenced your life, who you've been friends with, and especially with the military. It is the kind of people where you just pick up the phone and the conversation just carries on where it left off.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I had 15 years of pure fun. I wasn't in trouble as much as you, but I look back on my Air Force days with such fondness, and I think that's the camaraderie and the brotherhood or sisterhood that everyone has that has been there. I mean, you do get the odd person that goes, "Oh yeah, my career was shit," and just hated every second of it. But obviously, that wasn't their calling. That wasn't.
No, and that's it. I think it's like I think I didn't realize that at the time. But what I was kind of starting to do then was it was like, well, I need to. If I'm not, if I want it, if there's something else, then it's like like you say, that is a leap of faith. It's that sort of, well, okay, if you think that things are maybe better, that you do think the grass is greener, then don't talk about it. Just do it. So yeah.
Well, I mean, again, this is leading on to the normal question you ask everyone is, in what way have you initiated your JFDI? But you've done so much already.
Yeah,
I mean, you have just been fucking doing it an awful lot of your life, whether that be getting into trouble or leaving the effort or your different career changes, leading up to the creation of that wonderful HQ I went to downstairs.
Yeah, Force Forward.
I mean, I've got 1,000,001 questions. I mean, we're already going to smash my record tonight. Look at it. It's 1 hour, 28 minutes.
Sorry.
The current record is 1:34, I believe, which was held by me, but we're going to smash that tonight, mate. I mean, I have got so many questions about Force Forward, purely from the conceptual idea to how you've actually developed your own style, because there are 1,000,001 different coaches out there. But what I wanted to ask you was, what makes you different, or what you deliver different? What honed your skills on it, and above all, what gives you the greatest passion?
Well, yeah, like I said, with that Roachford song and having to kind of go inside to kind of oh no, I've not actually come on to that, but
let's stick to the script.
Yeah, I think where that came from was kind of starting to question what I was passionate about in life, and all of the things that we've spoken about so far, about reconnecting people, about sharing stories, and seeing how that makes people feel, sort of like, you know, supporting people, and kind of just looking at, you know, that journey of mine that we've spoken about where I've kind of, you know, taken that leap and left the Air Force, got a decent job, you know, but kind of gone off the rails a little bit, and kind of struggled to kind of fight that, you know, to find whether it was you know, following the death of my friend, or whether it was just the fact that I didn't really know what I was doing. I knew that I had a great job. I knew I had a wonderful family, but I kind of went into periods of just being so down and so low. You know, around that time of coming back from India, and that, like I say, that recovery period brought about with it kind of quite a lot of like real dark times in my life, where I struggled to get out of bed. I didn't know. I'd wake up in the morning, sort of saying, "What's the point?" There were times where I had nothing to drive me, and this is. I look back now, and I don't not so much feel guilty about it, but I think, you know, my eyes weren't open. I was like sleepwalking through life, and I couldn't see, you know, the wood for the trees, as it were. I had like a wonderful wife. I had two amazing girls, and I couldn't see that if I couldn't do it for myself, well, then do it for them, and do it for the people whose lives that I had an impact on. And I couldn't see that. And I spent a number of years soul searching. You know, not so much after the sort of 2009, 2010 period. I spent about the next 6 or 7 years up until the sort of the birth of the Saturday Night Fight Club stuff. And at that point in time, I kind of realized that, you know, there was more to life, but I hadn't found it, and I didn't know what it was. And I didn't really know what my true passion was. And ultimately, I think when it all came to a head after that year that I mentioned in London, that year in London and doing a different job resulted in a big promotion for me at work. And I went into a job which I loved doing for the first year. It had some real good success. And then there was a big change in management. And I'm not, you know, I'm not going to look back and say that it was anybody's fault other than mine. Is that I allowed myself to kind of fall into a place where I wasn't feeling like that I was valued in the role. And I ultimately, again, I probably had like the lowest of lows, to the point where I'd like started flipping thinking about ways in which I could take my own life. And I didn't actually, you know, I didn't try it, but I was thinking about it, and I was like, I was researching stuff online, and I was like, you know, looking at, you know, there was a game. I think it was my daughter. There was a game that my daughter played at the time. It was like 101 Ways to Die or something. And it was like, and I kind of played that game, and it was like, that's not a good place to be. And I was doing a job that was paying me more money than I'd ever had in my life. And I was like, what's the point in having this money if I'm thinking these thoughts and I'm not happy? You better fucking get a grip. And I mean, really, like, you better do something. And so I decided to leave. I didn't know what I was going to do. I went to, like, you know, because of where I was sitting in the organization at that point in time, I was reporting to one of the directors, and I went to speak to the managing director at the time. And again, I don't need to mention any names. And I just said, you know, I can't, I need to leave. And I explained a lot of the things that, you know, had caused me to reach this decision. And they were like, you know, you've been here for 11 years. we'll put a package together for you. They offered me a number of options and a number of different moves, and I was like, ultimately, because of where I was in the organisation, it was like I was only ever, kind of 2 steps away from some of the things that, had got me to where I was and in here. So I left.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I did, a great believer in the planets aligning, my great friend Steve O'Neill and I had kind of, promised each other. He invited me, I think probably not about 20 years ago now, to do this walk, the Camino de Santiago, when he left the Air Force. But I mean, he's still in now. And we ended up doing this walk. It coincided with me leaving Sky. We went and we did that walk. And it started me on the path to dive in a little bit deeper inside him into, out of that, we'd had the Saturday Night Fight Club. So I looked at all the stuff that I was passionate about, all the stuff that I did well. And I started to kind of like think about that. And then I knew that I would have to develop some skill sets. So I got myself a personal coach. And then I got myself another coach for like discipline, because I'd identified that whilst I had an idea of what I wanted to do, I knew that I needed to improve some of the areas of my life that had been instilled in me in the Air Force, but that I'd let go by the wayside. And that was the penny drop moment, where I was like, hold on a second, this whole journey from leaving the Air Force has been about leaving and not taking or using or having the support infrastructure that allows you to work on all of the things that the military has instilled in you. So it's like you're in the military, let's say everything's done for you. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I had all this freedom to do what I wanted, work where I wanted, drink when and wherever I wanted, eat what I wanted, live my life. And I had this freedom, and it was too much freedom, and I didn't know what that direction. Again, you're in the military, you're told what posting you're going to have. You're told you work hard and you get your promotion, but the promotion normally comes with a caveat that by the way, you're posted somewhere you don't want to go, but you suck it up and you go. It's so like this, all of this kind of this journey of like, it was like that's what had happened to me. I'd left and I had got everything that I'd kind of thought I'd wanted, and then realized that I didn't actually know what I wanted. And everything fell apart as a result. So I worked with a coach on understanding what it was that really drove me, what I was good at, what I was passionate about. And we've spoken about it all. And that, providing that support that you don't get within any sort of transition from the military. Yeah, you get resettlement and you can go and work on a trade, and you can do work with people on like management coaching, on understanding how to get your CV best and how to prepare for interviews and stuff like that. But nobody discusses like, what your kind of deepest heart's desires are, and kind of following your heart to actually find sort of happiness. And at the end of the day, that's really, what my granny used to say to me when we were young. It's all like 3 H's is all you need in life: happiness, health, and
halloumi.
Maybe. But I mean, ultimately, it kind of comes down to happiness, strength, and kind of physical, well-being. Happiness, strength, and health.
Yeah.
And it was that on that journey where I thought, this is what I want to do. And as part of getting my own coach, I kind of got the tools and kind of techniques, and just, applying a different kind of mindset towards, do you know what? I've taken that full responsibility for my life. I've managed to now achieve, with some of the things that we've spoken about, more than I ever thought I was capable of, probably more than a lot of people thought I would be capable of. But actually, I'm doing good. and other people are telling me that I'm doing good. So I want Force Forward to do that and to help other people find their purpose and find their passion and be happier, healthier, and stronger.
Yeah.
And so we kind of pulled together a framework, and we did a few 7-day courses. But something didn't kind of feel right. In the last course that I did, it was like still a missing link.
Yeah.
And then I got injured in April of this year.
This is the hip.
The hip. Yeah. I was training for like a fan dance, and I was running and walking with like 20 kilos on my back. I was stronger than I'd ever been in my life, healthier. I was the lightest that I've been in like 20 odd years. And then this injury hit me, and I had to go back inside again.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I'd been practicing by this point for about 2 years was like cold water therapy and breathing techniques. So I've always kind of been an advocate for mindfulness and for like meditation. And kind of, you know, like one of the things that I did in the 5 months after I left Sky, before I did the walk, I had learned about how my brain worked. I did like qualification in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. I did another course in like a mindfulness practitioner course, and I learned about how the body and the mind connect, and sort of, you know, yes, about the emotions, but how different parts of the brain trigger different emotions, and which part of the brain are responsible for certain memories and all of that sort of stuff. So when in the tail end of 2019, I was introduced to the Wim Hof method, and this was about how you can reconnect to yourself, to others, and to nature through structured breathing, through cold exposure, and through a commitment to pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and improving your mindset. The penny dropped at that point in time. And it was then that I kind of realized, after carrying out the practice, I would use the practice to help myself get well. And so from April until, you know, September, when I'm back to, you know, it's not fully fixed, but I'm back to day. I'm good. I'm running again. I'm not lifting weights yet, and the way that I got there, you know, quick, because it was like torn nerve endings that I had, and like down in my sciatic nerve and my piriformis muscle, and, you know, right in a real pain in the arse. I mean, quite literally. But I used the Wim Hof technique, the breathing and the ice baths. I obviously did that 40 crazy days of, you know, going in the ice bath every day, drinking juice. I got myself down to 70 kilos, which was the lightest I'd been. And that was the Wim Hof method. So I decided to invest again in myself and pursue the Wim Hof instructor track, which I'm doing at the moment. And the plan there is that I finished that. I have the Wim Hof instructor qualification at the end of January. And between now and then, we're looking at that, defining that sort of new model to bring the things that I'm passionate about, the things that I know that I'm good at, I'm told that I'm good at, you know, with my own kind of subtle blend of humor, and we'll have a subtly different proposition within Force Forward to offer people that want to, you know, look inward, to find their purpose, that are happy to push themselves out of their comfort zone, that are happy to be told what to do, but more importantly, that people that are ready to kind of take that leap and take complete responsibility, because this is not just about physical, the mental side of things is as well. You know, this is like about how you look at back to the accident. This is about how we can improve relationships as well. So it's bringing all that together. And right now, concentrating or aiming that at the forces as an initial sort of, you know, the people that I think that I can help the most, because it's where I came from. But what I'm learning now is that there are a lot of people that are starting to hear about Wim Hof method that are coming to me to learn more about the breathing technique. So whilst it's it's more, I think there's a military style to kind of what I do, because a lot of it is, look, if not now, when? You know, we only get one shot at this life, so you better make the most of it.
And what would you actually say to someone who is interested in this kind of thing, but you, with your experience, you're realizing they're not really ready yet? You know, there's always that person who goes, oh yeah, I want to try that, and not, you know, full well that their heart's not in it, and then they're just going to sack it off after a day or two. I mean, you must have seen these kind of people. You obviously you want to help them, but you know that they're not ready to receive that help because they're not going to listen.
Yeah, and I mean, I've experienced that. There are people, there's people that I've tried to help, but at the end of the day, you know that saying, when the teacher will make himself known when the student is ready. At the end of the day, I kind of know what I offer, and it's within all of that. You know that I mean, my story is testament to itself.
And what a story it is, folks.
The folks, there are people. Listen, my checkered past, so that, you know, a lot of people that know me from way back in the day are fully within their rights to look and go, what the fuck can he teach me? What does he know that I don't know? I get that. I get it, you know.
But at the same time, your CV is now, you can see where you've invested in yourself, how much effort you've put in, and how you've grown as a person and as a coach. Yeah. So obviously this is the foundation of the ongoing force forward.
Yeah, all I would say to those people that are kind of itching to do something but not quite ready to take that leap, or they're not ready, or they're still kind of struggling to kind of, you know, make that change, is very simple. All I would say is, nothing changes unless something changes.
Exactly.
It's like, you know, Karen and I, we've been discussing. I mentioned, I think it was on the phone to my mum and dad actually the other week, and I said, you know the definition of insanity, and they were like, sorry. And I was like, well, I don't know that it's the dictionary definition of insanity, but continuing to do the same thing over and over and over again and expecting to get a different result. Yeah. That is an insanity. If you keep going through the same loops in life, you know, and wondering why you keep finding yourself back in the same place, then you need to change something.
Absolutely. So, absolutely. Right, how are we doing? Oh, look at that. We've smashed the record.
Where are we?
We're now at 1 hour 48 minutes.
Oh my good God, I've still got 2 songs.
We've still got 2 songs. Let's crack on with your next tune, sir. We'll hear about the music.
Oh, yeah. So the next song's Dignity by Deacon Blue. So this one, again, there's a number of different threads. I'm going to try and be a little bit more succinct, because we don't want to be knocking the arse out of 2 hours. This album with Dignity, Raintown, it came out as I was joining the Air Force. And I listened to, around that age, I was sort of like 16, 17. And I listened to the album, but I never really, the song never really sunk in. It was a Glasgow band, obviously, Deacon Blue, that sang it. But it wasn't until, I think when Karen and I, after Karen and I got married, there's a number of things that it reminds me of. So when we were living down in Norwich, and when we were living in High Wycombe, and we would drive up to my parents', this is long before like playlists and stuff, we would have like CDs, a running order of CDs that would get played in the car, and it would always culminate with like Dignity by Deacon Blue. I would put that on as we were going over the Kingston Bridge, because the Kingston Bridge takes you from like the sort of, you know, one side of Glasgow over to the other, and it was coming over that bridge was like the homeward stretch. It was like on the, you know, as we got over the Kingston Bridge, I was only 10 minutes from home. Yeah. And so that always sticks in my mind. But then Dignity as a big Scottish anthem, when I left the Air Force, I went on numerous Tartan Army trips with like Gordon Clark and with Lenny and with some of the boys that I met along the way. And Dignity was one of those songs in the bar that, like, regardless of where you were, whether we were in like flipping Germany, whether you're in like Holland, Lithuania, was a crazy trip that I went on. And even in bars, like, you know, the smallest of bars in Lithuania, somebody would always find a way of like sneaking a CD or a tape. And you would be sitting there, you know, and all of a sudden, there was a place in Lithuania we found, for example, where it was a little pub in the front, and then we were like just walking through, and it opened up. There was this massive bar in the back, and it was flooded with Tartan Army. And I remember Dignity playing in there, and everybody getting up on the tables. And so it's a big, you know, it's a bit of a, reminds me of, you know, Scotland, and I guess
you from Scotland,
coming home, really, as well. You know, those Tartan Army links, that sort of like Kingston Bridge aspect. And I've listened to the lyrics and the words more and more over the years as well. And I think it's just a song for me about kind of, you know, about coming home. And again, not only coming home, but again, you know, that sort of transition. And I'm not going to cover it again, but that sort of, you know, looking inside, it's like coming home to yourself, if you will, as well. And not forgetting who you are, not forgetting where you've come from, not forgetting your own journey, not forgetting the mistakes that you've made, and not forgetting what you're good at. And you know, that's a tune.
It's a deep one. It's a very deep one. It is a deep one.
Do you want the last one?
We'll knock that out. I do have some questions.
Okay.
And I have a little fun element. But yeah, I think we could be smashing the 2-hour barrier. This is an exclusive, guys and girls. It's
we can always, do you know what we can do? Because these are all going on podcasts on Spotify.
I was going to say,
we can split it. We can do part 1 and part 2.
I don't know if my good lady wife Mags will spare me for another night to fly. I've flown over. Thank you, Mags and the boys, for letting me fly over tonight. Give me the night off to be here, especially to interview the interviewer. But come on, let's crack on with your last tune.
Oh, right. Okay. So by
a fantastic band.
Yeah, in 1995, when I was at Nita Z, a mate of mine at the time, I mean, still speak to him. I've not seen him in years. Periodically speak to a guy called Kev Clowry, Jed, affectionately known, introduced me to a Manchester band called Alone. I think it was a mate of his was in this band, and I kind of felt I had to repay the favour. And at the time, I was sort of there was a music shop. I was on CDs by that point, and there was a little CD shop in Norwich. I can't remember what it was called actually, but I would go down. I'd buy at least 2 or 3 CDs a month. I was buying a lot at that point in time, and it was in 1995 that this band called Embrace sort of hit the scene. And they did it differently, because they didn't release singles as we kind of know them or did at the time. They released EPs, and I bought their EPs, and I remember saying to Jed, like, look, have a listen to this. What do you think? And he was like, whoa, that's good. And the EPs came out, and then their album came out, and the album was called The Goodwill Out. And the song that blew me away from, I think, the moment that I heard it, now don't get me wrong, that album is like stone cold, you know, classic for me.
Yeah.
Anyway, and you've got tunes on there like, you know, My Business or My Weakness Is None of Your Business. You've got songs on there like Oh You Good People.
Yeah.
You've got songs on there like Come Back to What You Know, to Know, One Big Family, Retread. The album is amazing.
It's just phenomenal.
But The Goodwill Out, I think when I started to listen to the lyrics again, and just a few of them. This was about, I felt, a song about really nobody, that you're not going to know how well, you know, you've done in life until it's all over. But it coincided with me being at A to Z, and I spoke to Vicky a few weeks back about I felt like I was given a second chance at A to Z, and I think this song kind of it sort of sums that up.
Yeah.
Because in the words in it, and if at first you find you can't imagine how good can heal when you've got nothing worth healing, you won't know how well you've played until you're done and all you have is gone and the good will out. And you know, that's just kind of the chorus.
Yeah.
I think Embrace are one of my favorite bands. It's a toss up between I always, depending on what day you ask me, it's either Embrace or the Charlatans.
Yeah.
And the Charlatans aren't on this list, but the gigs that I've been to and the people that I've shared Embrace moments with, and some of the special moments that I know, some of the special moments that I've had, and you know, I need to a big shout out to yourself, to my good lady wife that I've seen Embrace with, anybody else that I've ever seen Embrace with, and one person in particular who's like my Embrace brother, Neil Wilkinson.
Neil Wilkinson.
So I met him at High Wycombe.
As did I.
And I went to my first Embrace gig with him. It was in Regent's Park, and the two of us still, when we talk, we still talk of our disgust. It was in 1997, so it was 2 years after the first album came out. In fact, it was the day the second album came out that we saw them live in Regent's Park, or a bar, a gig venue in Regent's Park area. And they charged us £3.50 for a bottle of lager. Now, this was 1997, right? And I was like,
you used to pound a pint in the Corporals Club.
I know. I was like, this is outrageous. So I then went to Embrace. Went on. They're the only band I've ever known to do this. They did like secret gigs where they'd like set up a website where you had to get a password, and then you got in the password, and then they didn't tell you where the gig was. They gave you clues. Yeah. And then you had to find your way to the gig. And I went to this secret gig of theirs in London. It was in Kensington Park. And I remember I was working for 3 at the time, and it was the first video of mobile phones. And I went and I was like filming them. And Danny McNamara, the lead singer, like nobody else had these mobile phones. I had one because I was working for 3. And I remember like doing a video call to my sister. And I went right up to Danny McNamara after they'd kind of finished their like little set. And I went up to him and I got right in his face and I was like, "Oi, Danny, say hello to my sister." and he said to her, on the, this wasn't even part of the story. He said to her, "Why are you not here? That's a bit slack." And she went, "Did you just call me a slag?" And he went, "Oh, no. And he gave the phone back to me. And he was like, so there was that moment. I remember they did a signing, Embrace did a signing in Glasgow, when they released Out of Nothing. Another absolutely fantastic album. I think it's probably, that's kicking about here. And I took Heather, my eldest, along to that signing, and I got in their face a little bit at the signing. Well, I was just being friendly, but Neil was out in Paris at the time. And as I was getting my CD signed, I was like, "When are you going to do Paris?" And they were like, crikey, people were just like, "Can I get a picture and can you sign it?" And I was like, "When are you going to play a gig in Paris?" And they were like, "Oh." So I've had the real privilege of like meeting them a few times. And then they did a secret festival a few years back. In fact, they did a couple, and I took the family along, and Heather and Charlotte came in the night before the gig. We went and we camped out, and we were just walking around the site, and we bumped into Richard and Danny McNamara. And Heather, I think this is where Heather now, like, so Heather went on to kind of meet when I went and worked for Tim Burgess at Kendall Calling as his writer in residence. She met like a whole raft of bands, including Tim Burgess, including Nick Hayward, Roddy Frame from Aztec Camera, then Edwin Collins, Public Enemy. And she was just like, oh yeah, just this, like, meeting famous people's just the thing. And I think that started when I took her to see, Embrace at this signing. So all of these things, but I think where it ultimately happened with the Goodwill Out is that is how Embrace close their set. And so it's also my favorite set closer.
Yeah.
And this is a very close one. I mean, the song itself is far more deep, but this is my favorite set closer, which is a very close call. And I know I said it's taken knocking on to, I've mentioned them, but this is a close call in my favorite set closer between the Goodwill Out and Sproston Green from the Charlatans. So that is it. And I think, again, just coming back to it, it's I think the Goodwill Out in everyone, but only if you are prepared to just fucking do it and step out of your comfort
Again,
zone.
ladies and gentlemen, we come back to the JFDI podcast. It's all about just doing it. It's grabbing your cojones, give them a squeeze, and just fucking doing it, which is brilliant. That's your songs.
That's it.
Now, I've got a few quick fire questions, so I want you to clear your mind. Now, some of these you've already kind of answered, but clear your mind, and you've got to be quick.
Is there anybody still watching?
I've no idea.
Yeah, there is.
Is it? Wow.
There's loads still watching.
This is amazing.
Yeah, my sister's
don't
watching.
worry. We'll
Love
get.
you, sis.
Hi, Fee. We shall get round to every. There's more people watching.
Oh, Vicky's
We'll give you all a little mention in a mo. But right, first band you went to see.
Rochford. First band was actually the four of us, and actually on that bill as well, it was the four of us. Then Gun. Yeah, at the Barras.
Word up.
Yeah, word up. Better days.
Better days.
Yeah, taking on the world, man.
Oh, what a band.
Yeah, but Rochford, I went to see Rochford. Yeah, that was the first gig at the Barras.
First record bought.
Shakin' Stevens, Green Door.
Yeah. If you could be in a band, what instrument would you play?
The drums.
What music would your band play? Genre.
Right. So I know this because this is a future project. I want to produce music. And I know what, so like my lyrics, like when I do the poetry, I have an idea in my mind. So it's psychedelic. It's like something that's like Pink Floyd-esque Tame Impala meets the Streets, sort of Sully Breaks type rap, sort of, yeah. So
nice and
like,
simple.
So it's a little bit of, it's an infusion. It doesn't exist.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And of course, if you're gonna,
there is a hole in the market for something just like that.
So yeah, but there needs to be. But here's the thing. I think that it would have to be built. I would need to have a lead guitarist who is as good as Prince, right?
Tim Naylor.
I would need to have a bassist.
Cy Akins.
I would. Ultimately, I'd need to learn how to play the drums. But Disappearing Scotsman, the Jim Sporrinson character was obviously the lead singer. So the band is there. The 11 Hungry Kittens was formed. But I think that's the kind of genre if it was just me making music and putting it out there. But ultimately, bringing all of that together with other people, it infuses indie, rock, a bit of psychedelia. Yeah.
Like it. Very strong. Worst gig? There's always one bad one.
Do you know? That's a really hard one because I kind of always find...
Got a hard question in there.
I always find something to Oh, I know. I know what it was. So can a band at a festival count?
Yes.
Right. So I was at Reading Festival the year that this is how it worked in my head, and it might not have actually happened. I'm pretty sure it was though. Daphne and Celeste, right? Do you remember
Yes,
them?
I do.
How fucking atrocious, right?
Oh.
So they came on, and so it's a toss up because there's two performances. Like the one I'll tell you about. So let me go over two, right? Daphne and Celeste, poor little girls. I don't know how old they were. They came on, they couldn't really sing. They didn't have any instruments. They had a tape or something playing. They were at Reading fucking Festival, for God's sake, right? And they were put on the set, I think, not directly before, but one. So they were like on, there was another band on after them, and then it was Slipknot that were on, right? Whoever curated that was having a laugh.
They were.
Because Daphne and Celeste, and it's I've only seen it happen twice, and the other person was 50 Cent. 50 Cent kind of deserved it because he antagonized the crowd. And again, that was at Reading Festival. I don't know if it was the same year, but basically what happened, and it's the only festival that I've seen it happen to such an extent, the bottles, and I mean, you know, Tea in the Park was infamous for, like, you know, plastic cups of piss being like chucked. And, you know, I know a number of people that have been, you know, drenched in urine amongst other bodily fluids and other fluids at festivals. But bottles, you know, because Reading was one of those festivals where people, although you weren't supposed to, they did sneak booze in. So Daphne and Celeste got literally bottled off the stage, as did 50 Cent. And both of those, the performances were pretty atrocious as well. But the funniest thing, you see these things that we're sitting on, these camp chairs.
Lovely camp chairs, yeah.
So this was the funniest thing. 50 Cent, he started off pretty good, but he was getting shit from the crowd. I think he was the first rapper to do Reading, because he did Reading before Eminem. He did, or did he?
No, Public Enemy must have been.
Well, yeah, Public, yeah. Oh, well, I don't know if they did Reading.
Well, I saw Public Enemy at Reading, I think maybe, it was 92.
Yeah, maybe Rage Against the Machine, although they're kind of heavier. But yeah, he wasn't well. He wasn't well, you know, received. And he got so much through, and the stage was like flooded. And the funniest thing was, he basically just said, "Fuck you."
Yeah, as you would.
And he walked off stage, and as he was walking off stage, it's the only time I've ever seen it, somebody actually threw a camping chair, and they managed to get it. It landed on the stage, and I just remember seeing this camp chair landing on the stage as 50 Cent like walked off. So yeah.
Okay, this is the question I spoke to you about yesterday.
Sorry, it wasn't quick fire.
No. Talk about dragging it out, folks. Is there a song you would describe as the perfect song, or technically perfect?
Yeah, so one song. The one, when you mentioned this to me, there's one song that stuck in my mind, and I've thought about it and gone through a whole load of things in my mind, but the one that sticks in my mind just because of what it is, and again, it is such a good tune, lyrically, musically, I think, emotionally, what it kind of induces in you as you listen to it. Don McLean, American Pie.
Not bad.
Yeah, that's the one that I kind of went, yeah, do you know what? And it's one of those tunes that that's almost like that kind of is a tune that, you know, those periods when you listen to stuff on the radio and you're kind of like listening to new music, and we've all said it at some point, there's nothing decent around at the moment. There's nothing new. There's nothing that kind of makes me there's nothing new coming out that makes me go, yes.
Yeah.
Then I'll listen to that, because it's like, you know, and you know what it talks about, and it's obviously it's all about that. It's about that air crash, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, when we lost Big Bopper and Richie Valens and Eddie Cochran, wasn't it?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Now, one, just skipping back briefly. Obviously, we have a lot of connection to the Air Force. Is there a Scopy or Air Force or military phrase that you still use?
I say,
Don't anyone say bead window. Thank you very much.
I say Roger quite a lot.
Roger. Roger that.
I do. In fact, I think I texted Karen Roger today. In fact, did I not message you?
I think you did actually. I think you did actually. Right. Okay. The last one is, this is the definite quick fire round.
Okay.
If anyone saw the program Friends, this is the Phoebe game. So you've got to definitely clear your mind, and it's got to be the first one. Ready?
Yeah, go for it.
Flora or fauna?
Fauna.
God, you're slow on these. Stadium or intimate gig?
Oh, intimate gig every time.
Guitar or piano?
Guitar.
Bass or drums?
Drums.
Morton or movies?
Morton.
Oh, hills or mountains?
Hills or mountains?
Yeah. So you got little hills or you got big
mountains?
mountains?
Big mountains.
Boxers or briefs?
Boxers.
Boots or trainers?
Trainers.
Cardio or resistance?
That's a tricky one, cardio.
Rivers or seas?
Seas.
Bums or breasts, Karen?
Tits all the way.
Top of the Pops or the chart show?
Oh, top of the Pops.
Rugby or football?
Football.
Okay. The one question you've asked just about everyone.
Yeah.
You win the lottery.
Yeah.
Multi-millions.
Yeah. What do I do with it?
What do you do with it?
I would actually do what a number of people have said. So
spend it.
I would want to make sure that the people that I love are comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think what creating, force forward and what I've done is that I wouldn't just give it. I wouldn't just give it away. I would want to, not conditionally, but I wouldn't, I'd kind of quite like to see, I guess, quite philanthropically, I'd like to see it used for good causes.
Yeah.
And yes, I'd like to see friends and family, being okay. I think I'd like to take people on a holiday. I would travel. I would be able to just help more people because like advertising for Force Forward,
mm-hmm.
Getting more people involved in, getting the word out about, what I'm kind of trying to do.
Mm.
And you know what? I would pay whatever Nigel Benn required as an appearance fee for the JFDI podcast.
We need Nigel Benn on this podcast.
That's what...
especially now because there's a prize in it for someone if he gets on here. Right, let's have a run through the comments. I'll let you do your bit because it's your laptop.
Oh, keep going, 3 hours, said Mo.
Oh, don't know about that, Mo.
Hello, sorry, just in from work, said Vicky. Yay, Fiona. Looking good, gents. Neil, I don't know whether, Neil, you came on early enough. Great quick fire answers. I don't know. Neil, you need to watch it back. There's a massive shout out for you, mate.
Yeah.
Karen, yes, you did.
And
Aston Marston,
yes,
would
it
make
would.
me really comfortable. Fiona, it's yours if the lottery wins there. Yeah. What would you like?
And she could have Bop It on the steering wheel.
DB9.
Oh dear. Well, I mean, I'm out of questions. It's been a fantastic evening. I can't believe we've gone nearly 2.25 hours. It felt like 15 seconds.
Yeah.
This has just been brilliant. It's been lovely hearing your story.
Thank you.
My hat off to you, sir. You've delved deep, brought a lot out, and it's been fantastic. I did want to thank my good lady wife, Mags, and my boys for giving me the night off.
Thank you,
allow
Mags.
me to fly over here specially. So someone from Ireland who's English, who's got Welsh friends, has ended up in Scotland. in the deepest, darkest realms of West Lothian for the JFDI podcast. Thank you very much for letting me do the interview. Son. This has been a truly remarkable experience for me. I hope we haven't bored you to death, but I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. And ladies and gentlemen, I give you Graeme.
Thank you. Thank you. Normal service will be resumed, and it won't last as long. Do you know what? I should close.
I can't believe I've made one beer last 2.25 hours.
I know, it's nuts,
and it's alcohol free as well.
It's nuts. A good friend of mine's wife once said, the thing about Pinky, it's like, you know, I think he has this this sort of philosophy of why tell a story in 10 words when he can tell it in 1,000. It's probably.
I think we've got about 5 books coming out.
Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you.
It's been brilliant.
Absolutely wonderful.
Absolutely wonderful.
Thank you, brother.
And I hope you've all enjoyed it. So from us at the JFDI podcast, in the deepest, darkest depths of West Lothian, we bid you a good night and a fond farewell. See you soon.
Cheers, folks. Thank you.